Zeds seemed to appear out of nowhere. One day, things were normal. The next, we heard that massive hordes of the undead were closing on Farmingdale and its surrounding towns. No one even knows how all this started. Some say it's the result of a biological attack. Others believe it originated from the particles in a comet's tail. Whatever it's from, the dead are rising from their graves and consuming the bodies of the living. Some reports said that the National Guard is organizing a relief effort, but who knows how long that will take, if they ever come at all. The people of Farmingdale must band together and fight to save the town and each other. If the citizens can hold out long enough, the members of the local government are sure that help will eventually arrive. But until then, we're on our own. The latest reports say that the zombies are approaching Farmingdale from 5 separate directions, and we must be prepared to react quickly and decisively. If these devils are allowed to reach the town center, there won't be anyone left to rescue.
Colonel Kingman took stock of the assets that he had at hand. He opened the folder on the top of the pile. The first individual is an ex-Special Forces veteran named Brett Hunt. He became a local hero of sorts, having captained the high school football team. He went off to war, earning himself a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for his efforts. Following a medical discharge from the Navy, he returned home to a hero's welcome and was elected sheriff by a loyal and grateful electorate. The next folder contained the dossier of a former CIA analyst named Mordecai Johnson. He was once one of the top cryptological linguists in the company, but has since become convinced that the end of the world is fast approaching, and has devoted himself to a survivalist lifestyle, living in a cabin in the mountains above the town. With the advance of the Zeds, he has traveled down from his mountain bunker to help defend the town. With him, he's brought a trove of food and ammunition that he'd been stockpiling for years. He is skilled in heavy weapons, practical medicine, and preparing traps. The third folder is that of a Costa Rican immigrant named Betty Bolivar. Betty was an enforcer in one of the most vicious street gangs in America, where she built a reputation as being a ruthless and cunning street fighter. Following a lengthy prison stint, Betty has since moved to Farmingdale to seek a new life. That is until the Zeds arrived, and killed her beloved dog, Dulce. Betty has vowed to equal the score, and send every Zed back to the hell they came from. Finally, there is a local roller derby team called the Farmingdale Furies, led by their charismatic founder, Angelina Fury. These women have built a reputation as being fierce competitors on the roller rink. With the appearance of the Zeds, they have taken up baseball bats and steel rods and have patrolled the streets of Farmingdale on their skates, as avenging angels, seeking the undead whenever and wherever they can find them.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Solo Gamers Club. Thank you for joining me. Tonight we're going to be playing Herman Luttman's Dawn of the Zeds. This is the 3rd edition. In addition to the standard game, we'll be using all 3 of the expansions. The only module I will not be using is the Trains module from expansion 3. We're going to be using the Director's Cut, and we'll be playing at a medium solo level. I'll begin with an overview of the starting board position. At the town center, we have Colonel Kingman, followed by Mr. Johnson, Sheriff Hunt, Bouncing Betty, and the Farmingdale Furies. In addition, we have a 3-strength civilians unit. On the suburban track, we have a 5-strength zombie at the starting location, and we have a 2-strength civilian unit in East Irick, and a 3-strength civilian unit in Beauville. Forest track, we have a 4-strength zombie at the starting location, along with a 2-strength civilian unit in St. Thomas. The mountain track, we have a 5-strength Zed and a 2-strength civilian unit at Lefty's Pass. The highway track, we have a strong 6-point Zed at the starting location, along with a 2-strength civilian unit in Ingeborg. And finally on the tunnel track, we have a 5-strength zombie at the start location. We have a 3-strength security unit at the security guard post, and a 4-strength security unit at the town center basement. We'll begin the sequence of play starting by drawing an event card. Following that, we'll develop ourselves a strategy to deal with that initial event. The event card is revealed to be, let's move, people. We'll begin with our 4R phase, and that is our Raiders, Rangers, Refugees, and Rescuers phase. Now, since this is the opening turn, we don't have any of those on the board at this point. We'll move on to the next step, and that's our infection phase, and that's listed as no, so we don't have to worry about that at this turn, at this point. Then we'll move on to the eat phase, and we're supposed to roll a die there to determine whether or not we're going to consume supplies. In this case, we have no units at the hospital or in the refugee camp. And then we'll move on to the Zeds phase. We're going to have activity on the forest track and on the mountain track. We'll begin with the forest track, and we're going to activate the Zeds on that track. We have a 4-strength Zed at the starting location on the forest track. He's going to move to Route 6. That group of zombies is slowly approaching St. Thomas. Next is the mountain track. Zombies there will activate. We have a 5-strength zombie at the start location, and he's going to move to Trail 6. And he's within 1 space of Lefty's Pass. And now it is our activation phase. We're going to have 4 points of activation, and the card also says, during this phase, all move actions that begin in the town center are free. So that is really great. We're going to try to take full advantage of that. So we're going to set our actions marker to 4 to reflect the amount of actions we have from the event card. In addition to the 4 actions we have from the event card, we have our player action token along with Sheriff Hunt's leadership token. Well, I think we're going to try to take full advantage of our ability to activate the units at Town Center for movement for free. So I think what we'll do is we're going to send Sheriff Hunt down the forest track to the farm. He has a movement ability of 4, so we'll move him from Town Center to the farm. And he has a special long-range ability where he can make gunfire attacks from 2 spaces away with a left shift of penalty. So if I can get him to eventually to St. Thomas, we'll be able to start taking pot shots at those zombies on Route 6. And I think also in addition, we're going to move Mr. Johnson down the mountain track, and I'll try to get him to Lefty's Pass. Mr. Johnson has a move value of 4, so we've moved him from the town center to trail number 3. Eventually I'd like to get him to Lefty's Pass, where he's going to probably try to build some defenses, and then we'll have him use his heavy weapons ability and take some shots at the zombies at Trail 6. The suburban track, even though there hasn't been any movement on it, I'm always sensitive about that suburban track. There are 4 named locations on that track, along with 2 sets of civilian units and villagers. So I think we're going to send Bouncing Betty to Beauville. She has a movement value of 4. So we've moved Bouncing Betty to Beauville, and that'll help to kind of stabilize that area a bit. Eventually I'd probably like to get her to East Irick. We have a 3-strength civilian unit in the town center, and I'm going to try to take advantage of these free moves. So I think we're going to send that down the highway track. And eventually we'll try to get them to maybe have a defensive position at the nuclear plant. Now the civilian units only have a movement value of 2. So we'll move them from the town center through the downtown area to Interstate 1. And then from Interstate 1 they can eventually make it to the nuclear plant with another move. And I think we'll keep Colonel Kingman and the Farmingdale Furies at the town center for the time being. Now, thanks to Mr. Johnson's starting abilities, his stockpiles, we managed to get a total of 10 supplies and 7 ammunition, so that's pretty good. And I'm going to use that ammo early in the game this time, and we'll try to take some shots at those zombies that are coming towards us. So I think what we'll do is we're going to spend 1 action, and we're going to activate Sheriff Hunt for movement. That gives us 3 actions remaining, plus our player action, and then his leadership ability. So we've activated Sheriff Hunt. He's currently at the farm, and we're going to have him move to St. Thomas. That'll get him in position for his long-range fire. We're going to spend another action, and we're going to activate Sheriff Hunt for gunfire attack using his long-range ability. It'll leave us with a total of 2 actions left on the chart. That's also going to cost us 1 ammunition point. That'll leave us with 6 ammo. Sheriff Hunt is going to use his long-range special ability, and he's going to target that 4-strength zombie unit on Route 6. He has a gunfire strength of 5, which is going to be reduced by 1 to the column to the left because of the long-range fire. And he's going to roll 2d6. His roll is a 7. And he's going to inflict 2 hits on that 4-strength zombie unit in Route 6. And now I'm going to spend another action, and we're going to activate Mr. Johnson for movement. That'll leave us with 1 action remaining. He has a movement value of 4. He's currently on Trail 3, and we're going to move him to Lefty's Pass. And now Mr. Johnson has arrived at Lefty's Pass. He's going to take control of the defense of Lefty's Pass. And then Mr. Johnson is going to use another action that will put us down to 0 actions available. And he's going to spend 2 supplies to construct some prepared defenses at Lefty's Pass. And that's going to give us a positive 2-column shift in defense. And that action has reduced our number of actions to 0 and our supplies from 10 to 8. Well, we've exhausted our event actions, so I think what we're going to do is use our player action token. And we're going to activate Mr. Johnson, and he's going to conduct a gunfire attack. So we're going to spend our player action, and we'll move our ammunition down from 6 to 5. So Mr. Johnson is going to conduct a gunfire attack. Now he has a special heavy weapons ability. His gunfire attacks receive a 2-column shift to the right. So his gunfire attack is going to be 4, and then it'll be raised by 2 up to 6. His roll is a 6, and that is going to inflict 2 hits on the 5-strength zombie in Trail 6. Now the only actions that we have remaining now are our Sheriff Hunt's leadership token, but he's not going to be able to utilize that because the space he's in, he has defiant civilians there which are unable to move at this point. So that is going to bring our action phase to a close. Move on to step 7, and that's our housekeeping phase, where we're able to invert all of the tokens that we have spent during the turn. And we just double check that we have 0, our actions are to 0. That was a decent first turn for us. We were able to move some of our assets into positions that will help to defend these tracks that we've moved them on. And we actually were able to make some gunfire attacks and inflict some decent casualties on the zombies. We'll start a new round, and we'll begin with the draw an event card phase. The event card is revealed to be rule number 7, cardio. We begin with the 4R phase. Now that has a value of 1, but we have no raiders, rangers, refugees, or rescuers on the board. We'll move on to the next phase, and that is the infection phase. Our infection level is at 0, so there's no chance of an infection. Move on to the eat phase, and that has a number 1. That means we're going to have to consume one of our supplies. And that'll move us down from 8 down to 7 supplies. Now next is the Zeds phase, and we're going to have 2 activations on the suburban track. There's also a special note on the card that says at the beginning of this phase, place 1 new Zeds unit on an empty start space of your choice, if possible. Otherwise, place it on the start space with the lowest strength Zeds unit. If and when a Zeds unit enters a space occupied by any civilians or hero unit this turn, you may freely retreat that unit instead of engaging in hand-to-hand combat. All right. Well, there are 2 empty start spaces, one on the forest track and one on the mountain track. I'm going to select the mountain track, and we're going to place a random Zed in that location. And that ends up to be a fairly strong 6-point Zed unit that's placed in the mountain start location. So the suburban track is going to activate twice, and we have a 5-strength Zed at the start location. He is going to move to 6th Street. And then for his next activation, he is going to attack the units in East Irick. So we have no choice. The 2-point civilian unit in East Irick is going to have to be the combat unit, and the 5-strength Zeds will be attacking them. So the civilian unit is going to lose its defiant marker, and that's going to be able to allow them to move now. So we're going to set up the combat. The 5-strength Zed is attacking a 2-strength civilian unit. Our starting column on the hand-to-hand combat table will be Zeds times 2, but with the defenses of the East Irick location, that'll move us 1 column to the right, and that will be the Zeds advantage column. The roll is a 3, and that is going to result in 3 hits on the civilian unit. And that's going to result in the unit being reduced and taking an additional hit on top of that. So the civilian unit has lost the battle, and they're going to have to retreat to Farmingdale University. So the Zeds unit is now going to enter the village of East Irick. So our defiant villagers are now going to become refugees, and they have no choice but to flee to the university. So with no friendly units remaining in East Irick, chaos is going to reign supreme in the village. And we placed a chaos marker to indicate that in the location. That's going to conclude the Zeds phase, and we'll move on to our actions phase. Bouncing Betty is in Beauville, and she hears of the chaos that is ensuing in East Irick, and she springs into action. We're going to spend 1 action point to activate Bouncing Betty. She has 4 movement points, and we're going to move her from Beauville to East Irick. And there she's going to confront the 5-point Zed unit and attempt to regain control of East Irick. Now Betty has some very powerful abilities. Her first one is Ruthless. When on her full strength side, all of her hand-to-hand combat is on the humans times 3 column. In addition, she is heedless. When she wins any hand-to-hand combat against the Zeds, she moves into the next space if it contains any Zeds unit and attacks, increasing the infection as normal. She stops when there is no new Zeds unit to fight, or she loses. She cannot enter a start space. All right, so Betty is going to attack that 5-point Zeds unit using the human ×3 column. Unfortunately, the roll is a 3. So that means that she is going to inflict 2 hits on the zombies. She's going to take a hit, and they're going to be forced to retreat. Zombies have taken 2 hits, and so has Betty. But with her heedless ability, she pursues the zombies into 6th Street and continues her attack. Now, while she's on her reduced side, her ruthless ability becomes that she attacks on humans ×2 column. Betty's going to inflict a total of 3 hits on the Zeds, but unfortunately, she is also going to take a hit. We'll have to make a saving throw for Betty. Now, she is deathless. It says when she makes a saving roll, she can roll 2 dice and choose the better outcome. All right. Betty's rolled a 4 and a 5. We'll choose the 5, and that's going to place her in the hospital on life support. Betty was found unconscious, and she was taken to the Farmingdale General Hospital, and she's in critical condition right now, but she's still alive. Next, we'll turn our attention to Mr. Johnson. He's at Lefty's Pass, and we're going to use the player action to allow him a gunfire attack on the wounded zombies in Trail 6. So Mr. Johnson is going to use his heavy weapons ability, which is going to give him 2-column shift on his gunfire attack, and he's going to target that 5-strength Zeds unit on Trail 6. Roll is a 7, and he's going to inflict 2 points of damage on that Zeds unit. That attack is not only going to reduce their capabilities down to 3, they're also going to take an additional wound. That gunfire attack is going to reduce our ammunition from 5 down to 4. And that's going to use up all of our available actions. The leadership token that Sheriff Hunt has won't be able to be used. He doesn't have any units that he can command in the location he's at in St. Thomas. So we're going to move on now to phase 7, and that's going to be our housekeeping phase. So we flipped our player action token back to available, and our actions are now at 0, and we're ready for a new round. And our next event phase shows us its local Zeds outbreak. We begin with a 4R of 1 point. And that'll allow us to move 1 refugee on the board, and we do have some refugees on 4th Street. They're going to move to Beauville. Refugees have no stacking limit. They don't add to the stacking limit, so they're fine by moving into Beauville. Next is our infection phase. We're going to have to make a die roll. Our current infection level is at 2, and that represents the 2 times that Bouncing Betty made her attacks on the zombies in East Irick and on 6th Street. The infection roll is an 8, so we won't have any outbreak. Next up is the eat phase, and we're required to consume 1 supply. And that's going to reduce our supplies from 7 down to 6. Next up will be the Zeds phase, and they are going to activate on the suburbs track, the mountain track, and the tunnel track. And the event text reads, during this phase, for each regular civilian's unit eliminated or sent to the hospital after its saving roll, place a new Zeds unit on the space where it was eliminated and apply the stacking limit if necessary. The new Zeds unit may not move this turn. Alright, we'll begin now with a activation on the suburbs track. The damaged 2-point Zeds unit on 6th Street is going to move back in to East Irick. Now the mountain track will activate, and the damaged 3-point Zeds unit on Trail 6 is going to throw itself against the forces in Lefty's Pass. Mr. Johnson is going to step to the forefront and he will defend. The hand-to-hand combat will be using the equal to column, but we have prepared defenses, and that's going to move us to the human times 2 column. And Mr. Johnson does well. He rolls an 11. It's going to inflict 3 hits on the Zeds. And that's going to eliminate the Zeds unit. Now the Zeds unit that is trailing at the start space is going to move into Trail 6. As wave after wave of zombies is moving towards Lefty's Pass. And now the tunnel track will activate, and the 5-strength Zeds unit will move to the Chromotechnics lab, and chaos will result. That'll bring the Zeds phase to a close. We'll move to the action phase. We have 2 action points available to us. We'll begin our actions by spending an action to heal Bouncing Betty in the Farmingdale General Hospital. And that heal action is going to remove the EKG marker from Bouncing Betty. She's still in a pretty bad state, but she's at least stable for now. We're going to spend one more action and an ammo. We're going to activate Mr. Johnson for a gunfire attack. Leaves us with 3 ammunition remaining. Mr. Johnson is going to target the 6th strength Zed in Trail 6, and he's going to employ his heavy weapons ability, allowing him a 2-column shift on the gunfire attack chart. He'll be using column 5. Mr. Johnson rolls an 11, laying down some very accurate fire. And that's going to deal a total of 3 hits to the Zeds. And that gunfire is going to significantly reduce the Zeds. Their combat value is now down to 3. We're going to use our player action token, and we're going to activate Mr. Johnson once again, and he's going to attempt a forage roll at Lefty's Pass. Now Mr. Johnson has a special ability called Scavenger that allows him to roll 2 dice when conducting a forage action. All right. Mr. Johnson rolled a 3 and a 4, and the 4 is going to give him 1 supply. That'll move the supplies up from 6 to 7. Incidentally, that attack from the Zeds from Trail 6 earlier should have raised the infection rate up by 1. So the infection rate is now at 3. That's going to bring our actions phase to a close. We'll move on to the housekeeping phase. And with that, we'll move on to a new round. We'll begin with our draw an event card phase, and the card revealed is Infected Water Supply. We'll begin with our 4R phase, and that has a value of 1. We're going to use that to move our refugees from Beauville to 2nd Street as they make their way towards the town center. We'll need to make an infection roll. Infection level is at 3. Roll is a 5, so we'll have no outbreak. And next up is our eat phase, and we're going to have to roll a d6, and if that number is equal to or lower than the number of patients in the Farmingdale General Hospital and the refugee camp, we're going to have to spend a supply. Currently, there is just Bouncing Betty there, so only on a roll of 1 would we consume a supply. Roll is a 4, so we won't need to consume any supplies. That's always good. Next up is the Zeds phase. Zeds phase is going to be activations on the mountain track and on the forest track. There's also a special event that says at the beginning of this phase, roll a d6 and apply that many number of total losses in any combination of supply losses or hits to player units. All right, that's quite severe. We'll make the roll. The roll was a 5, so we're going to have to take a combination of hits or loss to supplies equal to 5. That's not good. And rather than taking hits to our heroes and to our civilian units, I think we're going to take all of them on the supply track, so that'll move us down from 7 down to 2. So we've gone from great abundance to very little. The mountain track will activate, and the damaged Zeds unit on trail 6 is going to throw itself against Lefty's Pass. Once again, Mr. Johnson is going to step to the plate, and he will take care of this hand-to-hand combat with the 3-strength Zeds unit. It's going to be a combat value of 3 to 3, so we are equal to column, but we have prepared defenses, so Mr. Johnson will be rolling on the human ×2 chart. The roll is an 8, and he's going to inflict 3 damage to the Zeds unit, and that is going to completely destroy it. He's completely wiped them out. Good job, Mr. Johnson. Now the forest track is going to activate, and we have a damaged 4-point strength Zeds unit moving from Route 6 to Route 5. Now we'll move to the action phase, and we have 2 actions. We'll set our actions marker to 2. And I think it might be time for us to do a little foraging. We're getting low on supplies and ammunition. I think we're going to spend 1 action point, and we're going to activate Mr. Johnson with his scavenger ability at Lefty's Pass. Mr. Johnson's scavenging ability allows him to roll 2 dice when conducting a forage action. He rolls a 6. That's going to entitle him to 1 ammunition point. That's going to raise us up to 4 ammunition. We're going to expend another action and an ammo point, and we're going to activate Sheriff Hunt, and he's going to attempt a gunfire attack. Sheriff Hunt is going to target the damaged 4-strength Zed unit in Route 5. He has a gunfire attack rating of 5. Sheriff Hunt rolls a 12 boxcars. That's going to allow him 4 hits on that zombie unit in Route 5. He's managed to cut them down to half strength. They've only got 1 wound point left. Once again, Mr. Johnson's going to be pressed into service. We're going to use our player action, and we're going to have him activate for foraging. He's going to utilize his special scavenger ability, and that'll allow him to roll 2 dice. His roll is a 4 and a 2. That will entitle him to find 1 supply, moving our supplies from 2 to 3. That's going to bring our action phase to a close. We'll move on to our housekeeping phase. Our action tokens are reset, and we're ready for another round. We'll begin the next round by drawing an event card. We've entered Act 2 now, and the card is working a double shift. We'll begin with our 4R phase, and that entitles us to 1 move. Once again, our refugees on the suburbs track, they're going to move from 2nd Street to the Farmingdale Suspension Bridge. They're quickly approaching the town center and safety. Next up is our infection phase, and we're going to have to make a roll. Our current infection level is 3. Roll is an 8, so we have no outbreak. Thank goodness. Next up is our eat phase, and that's going to cost us 1 supply, and that's going to move our precious supplies from 3 down to 2. Now it's the Zeds phase, and they're going to activate on the mountain track and on the highway track. The mountain track is currently clear of Zeds, but more are approaching in the start location. And a very powerful 7 strength Zed unit appears on the starting square of the mountain track. And at the highway track, we have a 6 strength Zed unit moving from the starting point to Interstate 6. They'll be upon the citizens of Ingeborg in a short time. Now it's our action phase, and we're going to have 3 actions available to us. We'll mark that on the card, 3 actions. The event says, during this phase, you can increase infection up to 3 total maximum. For each such infection increase, you may either gain a free heal action or perform a free research action. That's interesting. That's one thing that we are lacking, is we have no research capability at this point in the game. None of our heroes have any ability to do research at the laboratory. But I don't think increasing the infection rate at this time is going to be that beneficial. So we're going to pass on that, and we'll start with our actions. We're going to begin by taking an action and spending an ammunition to activate Sheriff Hunt in St. Thomas. Sheriff Hunt is going to make a gunfire attack on the 2 strength Zed unit in Route 5. He rolls an 11, and that's going to inflict 3 damage, destroying the Zeds unit in Route 5. Great shooting, Sheriff Hunt. Looking at our supplies and ammunition, looks like we're going to need to do some foraging. And there's no better person than Mr. Johnson with his scavenger ability. We're going to expend 1 action, and Mr. Johnson is going to forage at Lefty's Pass. His scavenger ability will allow him 2 dice for the forage roll. Mr. Johnson rolls double 6s, and that's going to entitle him to a double success on the foraging chart. It's going to allow him to gain 2 ammo. That'll move our ammo up from 2 to 4. Excellent job. I think we're going to expend an action, and we're going to heal Bouncing Betty at the Farmingdale General Hospital. That'll expend our final action, and Betty Bolivar will move to her full strength side. And we can discharge her from the hospital for no action. We're all happy to see Betty back and ready for action. And since Betty's back to fighting Trim, we're going to use our player action token and activate her for movement. She has a movement rating of 4, and she's going to move from the town center to Beauville. That's going to complete our actions phase. We're going to move on to our housekeeping phase, where we're going to reset our tokens, and that'll bring the turn to a close. And we're ready to begin a new round. We begin the new round by drawing an event card. That one's revealed to be Toxic Zeds. We'll start out with a 4R phase. It has a movement value of 1. And with that, our refugees on 1st Street are going to move into suburbia. Incidentally, those healings that we had performed on Betty at the hospital should have brought our infection rate down 1 for each incident. So we're going to move our infection level to 1. Now it's our infection phase. We'll have to roll 2 dice. And since we're on level 1, it's impossible for us to roll a 1 or less. So we'll move on to our eat phase. During the eat phase, it says we have to expend 1 supply. It's going to move our supplies from 2 down to 1. They're desperately low. Now it's the Zeds phase, and they're going to have a double activation on the highway track. The 6th strength Zed in Interstate 6 is going to attack Ingeborg. 2 strength civilians unit in Ingeborg is going to try to put up a defense. The initial hand-to-hand combat would be at Zeds ×3, but we're going to get a 1-column shift for the defenses of the town. We'll be rolling on Zeds ×2. Roll is an 11, and each side is going to take 2 hits, and the Zeds will retreat. The civilians have taken some casualties, but they've done their job, and they've protected Ingeborg from the Zeds. They've moved back to Interstate 6. The Zeds on Interstate 6 are going to reform, and they're going to launch another attack against Ingeborg. Beginning odds are Zeds ×3. Once again, the defenses of the village of Ingeborg will give us a 1-column shift to the right, and we'll be rolling on the Zeds ×2 column. That time, the roll was a 5. The civilians are going to be butchered. The Zeds move into the village of Ingeborg, and the defiant civilians become refugees. And they flee as best they can to Interstate 4. Following the battle at Ingeborg, chaos ensues. We need to make a saving roll for the civilians at Ingeborg. The roll's a 3, so they're going to be placed in the cemetery. The infection level will rise from 1 to 2. And now it's the action phase. We're going to begin with 2 action points, which we'll record on the chart. And it also states at the beginning of this phase, place a new Zeds unit on the highway track's start space. And a fresh 5-point Zed appears on the highway track. In addition, we place a toxic marker on the strongest regular Zeds unit. That's added to the 7-point strength Zed on the mountain track. Any combat with that unit is going to add 3 to the infection level for each hand-to-hand combat with that unit. We're in desperate need of supplies, so we're going to press Mr. Johnson into service once again, spending an action point and having him do some foraging at Lefty's Pass. And even with his scavenging ability, he fails with a 2 and a 3 roll. He found no supplies or ammunition at Lefty's Pass. We're going to spend an action, and we're going to activate the fleeing refugees in Interstate 4, and they're going to move to the nuclear plant. Hopefully this will buy them a little time before the Zeds in Ingeborg activate once again. We're going to use our player action token and activate the civilian unit in Interstate 1, and we're going to have them move to help defend the nuclear plant. And that's going to exhaust all of our actions for the turn. We'll go on to the housekeeping phase, and that will end the round. And I think we're going to end the video here. Thank you so much for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club, and I hope to see you next time for our continuation of Dawn of the Zeds 3rd edition. Thanks for joining me, and have a good evening.